Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome back. We are broadcasting live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, Odyssey, DLive, and Rumble. And welcome to all our new friends on these new platforms. Tonight, we're going to take a trip into the stranger side of conspiracy land. And this is something I've been wanting to do for quite some time now. Many of you asked me to do shows on some of the conspiracy theories out there concerning things like HAARP, or chemtrails, geoengineering, transhumanism. But to be very honest with you, that is not my usual wheelhouse. And I am not well read enough in those subjects to really guide us through all of this. So we wanted to find a real expert on those subjects. And I believe that we have found one in the form of our guest tonight, Elana Freeland. And you can search right on Amazon. And here's what I can tell you about Elana's books. They are dense. Like if you want actual scientific citations and articles that support some of her arguments, it's a really information dense book. And I've only got one of them, but there are many of them. She's written one book, Chemtrails, HAARP, and the Full Spectrum Dominance of Planet Earth. There's another one, Under an Ionized Sky, From Chemtrails to Space Fence Lockdown. And her latest, Geoengineered Transhumanism, How the Environment Has Been Weaponized by Chemicals, Electromagnetics, and Nanotechnology for Synthetic Biology. And these are all things that are fascinating to me, regardless I just love a good thick book, and the freedom of thought expressed in these books is interesting to me. Now, some of you may believe that a lot of these conspiracy theories, there's no evidence or basis for them, but there is an awful lot of scientific papers that I've noticed and things that Miss Freeland brings to the forefront here. And I have been admittedly dismissive of some of these things. I am very familiar with HAARP and what it's supposed to be, but there's all kinds of conspiracy theories around what they're actually doing. And these are very powerful transmitters that they have at this installation. We're going to hear all about it from literally the person who wrote the book on it. I'm so pleased that she's here. Please welcome our guest tonight, Elana Freeland. Welcome, Miss Freeland. Your first time here. Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you. And I really like your graphics. Very nice.
Oh, well, thank you. I don't know where to begin with you because you have written so much about all of these topics. And thank you so much, because people keep asking me to cover this stuff, but I didn't think I could do it justice being just all skeptical about it all.
This is, it's so complex. I mean, in a way, it's right in front of our faces all the time. It's in the sky. And we all think we know the sky. We think we know the clouds. We think we know the sunsets, the sunrises. And we hear rumors now and then. But as long as we can breathe and there's water to drink and we have food to eat, we really don't pay that much attention to what the military, and I call it the military industrial intelligence complex, is doing in the sky. And that's really what the story of geoengineering is, even though they use the word conspiracy theory a lot around this topic in order to keep the public from probing too deeply. And I don't know why I've been so driven to expose this. Of course, I'm a 60s leftover from, I came of age in the 60s.
So you were like a hippie chick with the flowers in your hair and all that?
I never was a hippie chick, because the hippies to me they were a certain type of young person who was going back to the land, living very simply, maybe on food stamps. Everything was not so intellectual with the hippies. No, I was more like the college kid
Like the
who
beatniks, right?
was, huh?
Like one of the beatniks that's into.
No, the Beats were before the hippies.
Okay.
They pretty much ended in maybe the early 60s, I would say, at the very latest. That would be Jack Kerouac, On the Road. We all looked up to them, but the 60s generation was not just sex, drugs, and rock and roll, which you hear from Newsweek magazine and Time magazine. No, it was also politics and spiritual quest and super, super camaraderie. I mean, we were tight with each other and we shared thousands of hours of conversation about the world and why we were born and what was going on in America and was the Cold War real. We were the deep thinkers. We were the deep divers, and we had big CIA problems, but we didn't know that it was CIA problems. That took several years for me to figure that out. So being a 60s person means that I was pretty much not believing in corporations, not believing in war, not believing in the oil industry, etc. We were all
Well, I'm
very,
with you there. I'm with you on
yeah,
all three of
yeah.
those. Yeah.
Well, exactly. And because I was sent to Girls Nation when I was 16 by about 800 and some girls to represent them at Girls Nation. And I had tea with John F. Kennedy in the Rose Garden when I was 16 years old, along with 99 other kids,
Oh, that's
half Girls
amazing.
Nation, half Boys Nation. And in the Boys Nation, was Bill Clinton. I didn't know him, but he referred to it several times during his presidency that he had been there with Kennedy in the Rose Garden on that very day. So I got to meet the president. I was very struck by him. And then 3 months later, he was dead on the streets of Dallas. And I had to go and give talks to the civic groups who had paid for my trip to Washington, and giving talks to rooms full of sobbing Americans was not easy. And I think that's the moment I politically woke up, was when I saw the incredible sadness of the country over a sitting president having been murdered in the streets of Dallas. So it's had a huge effect on me. And I just want to point that out, that the CIA is the one who invented the entire term conspiracy theorist.
I'm aware of that. Yes,
To
and they
cover up,
invented the term to cover up the JFK assassination.
yes,
They
to
did
cover
not
up
want.
anybody who questioned
They
it.
didn't want any
Anybody.
counter narratives to the,
Yeah.
to
So they've
the
gotten a
official
lot of
story.
mileage out of it, you know. They're still using it, and it still is sort of a meme now for people to just switch into a sort of mindset that, oh, this is something that you don't necessarily believe. So they've laid that one on us for the geoengineering. There are a lot of people who work on this topic. I'm not the only one, but I am pretty much the only one writing books about it now. So I've written these 3 books. If you had asked me 20 years ago if I would be writing books on geoengineering, I never would have believed it. But I have, through dint of research, realized that this may be the biggest elephant in the living room, right in front of us, what's going on in the sky. And we need to know about it while we make all of our decisions about just about everything else. I mean, electromagnetics, 5G, child abuse, you name it. It all has some, there's impact coming from what we're breathing and what we're eating and what we're drinking because of what's coming down on us from the sky. So I want to just lay that out for people, the rudiments of it, so they can understand.
And I guess we should start with chemtrails, because a lot of people think it's just water vapor. And I've heard various people, even friends and family, some people believe that there is something to this, what people call a conspiracy theory. Some people think it's all just water vapor and everybody's crazy. But some people think that they're putting some sort of chemicals and spraying chemicals into the atmosphere. The chemicals are variously described as, I think, aluminum salts, barium, polymers, polymer fibers, I'm sorry, silicon carbide, if I remember, and maybe thorium is one of those things.
Yeah, I mean,
but my question is, why would they spray those chemicals in the atmosphere, and what would those things specifically do to us and to the environment? For what purpose to spray these things?
Well, mysteriously so. Catherine Austin Fitts, I don't know, do you know her name? She's
Oh, sure, yeah.
Okay, she's an economics analyst. Catherine, years ago, did a survey of why there was $21 trillion missing from the American budget. And she and a lawyer friend of hers tracked and traced it down to find that it was actually more than $21 trillion. And part of her analysis was that this may have gone into a secret space program. And the idea of a secret space program, that takes us back to Kennedy, when he wanted to actually pursue the frontiers, the last frontiers of the Star Trek series, et cetera. He wanted to pursue space along with the Russians, who were then called the Soviets, right? It was the Cold War. And a secret space program had actually already started that I don't know that he knew about. And that was with Werner von Braun, an SS Nazi from Germany, who we brought over. Under Paperclip, but he was here actually in 1937. He was here actually at the beginning of the war. And he was, they were making plans for the secret space program out of the United States. So then when the war ended and we had Operation Paperclip, which for people who don't know, was a huge cover-up of bringing in at least 1,500 card-carrying Nazis and Germans, not just Nazis, who were scientists, doctors, people who understood technology, and we ensconced them. We scrubbed their records, changed their names.
There was a whitewashing of their history, and so going forward, they just were German immigrants to the United States. Nobody knew largely about their history, and this has always troubled me. I was into rockets when I was a child and model rockets, and I got to read about Werner von Braun. But they didn't teach us in school where he came from, or that he had killed, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people with those V2 rocket program before he came here to head NASA. And that was quite a revelation to me. When I learned that, I went, why didn't they tell us that in school? They never did.
Well, and that's the story, isn't it, of what conspiracy theory really is people blamed for looking under the rug or in the basement for the actual facts of history. In school, you pretty much go to sleep in history class because it's just one battle after another, one nation after another attacking another nation. And it's kind of boring and very repetitious. But if the real history is told, I think kids would be incredibly fascinated. And that's really what Paperclip was. I mean, when I first started talking about Paperclip years ago, people called me a conspiracy theorist, and it could never have happened, Elana. It never could have happened.
Yeah, and what's interesting about Paperclip is some people are aware that we took like rocket scientists like von Braun, but what people don't know is, like you said, there was 1,500. They got the best and brightest scientists, engineers, chemists. They had plasma physics guys before anybody even knew really what plasma physics were. People who studied high voltage electricity and strange experiments. They got all kinds of strange science guys in this Project Paperclip, and then they injected them into the military industrial complex here to get an edge, right? Is that why they did it? To get an edge on the rest of the world?
To get an edge in the Cold War, because of course it was already set up that the Soviets were now going to be our enemy. They had been our allies during World War II, and then suddenly overnight they're like enemies. And that and that brings up one of my so-called conspiracy theories is that the whole Cold War was a ruse. It never really was an intense competition. I remember when I was a kid, they were making us crawl under our desks in case the Soviets dropped a bomb on us.
I remember being very, very young, maybe kindergarten or first grade, and they made us go to a bomb shelter that the school had, like in the basement, and that was and then it was terrifying. Like, what? The nuclear bomb? And then they showed us a video, of this big bomb going off. Like, great thing to do to little kids, like scare the hell out of us.
Exactly.
But yeah, I even grew up under the threat of this nuclear annihilation and mutual assured destruction.
Exactly, and the reason they did that is it's very similar to what we've just been through the last few years. You can use fear, and it's a great way to goad a population into going along with the program. And why would they have made a Cold War right after World War II? Well, they had a lot of research they wanted to cover in technical matters, all the way from what is free energy to rockets and missiles and space, going into space, going to Mars, etc. And they had all this brain power now, because basically, in my opinion, we brought the whole Third Reich over here, the brains of the Third Reich, and ensconced them in American society, a democratic society, ironically enough. And then with the propaganda of the Cold War, they were able to use the tax dollars and a lot more money that they were getting from private foundations and pursue directed energy weapons. I mean, you name it. It was like a candy store in those days for anyone doing research. If you were willing to do the research, the military industrial intelligence complex wanted you to be using.
There was a lot of money, and there's even I saw a reference to that some of these scientists were driving around in brand new Mercedes and things that their salaries that they were officially given wouldn't have afforded them, in huge houses and things. So somewhere there was a secret funding source that was funneling huge amounts of money to these former Nazi scientists, and that's in itself is crazy. Like, why are you giving them all this money, and where's the money coming from? It was probably the beginning of the black budget,
Exactly. And we had passed the National Security Act of 1947, which not only made everything that was classified go into a separate session, so that there was no more openness in Congress, no more openness in the Supreme Court, and we were able to. They were able to pursue their research without anyone really knowing any different. And so the American, thrilled that the war was over, happy that the economy was booming, really kind of went to sleep, is the only way I can put it. Just went to sleep about what was going on in the 50s. And then we came to the 60s when Richard Nixon lost the election to John Kennedy, which had not been at all the plan, reminding me of an election we had in 2016 in which something very similar happened.
Yeah.
They had it in the bag.
And the coronated one didn't win in that circumstance as well. But it's a very tight, close election, and surprised and shocked a lot of people who just assumed that Nixon was going to sweep in.
Exactly. Yeah. And John Kennedy, I tend to think he was sort of like a Ivy League prep boy when he entered office. But slowly, in fact, very quickly, he and Robert, who was his brother, who was the Attorney General, began to put their heads together and learn a whole lot of things that were going on, that they didn't want the country going in that direction, including Operation Paperclip. So then began the struggle, the power struggle that ended in the assassination, not just of John Kennedy, but of Martin Luther King and of Robert Kennedy. So my generation went through that, I call it the assassination of the three kings. And this was the welcoming card to the nation America for me as a kid coming of age.
Yeah, it's got to be traumatic, right? Because these are three very important
they were important
political
to us,
figures, and they
and
were
then they
just murdered. Yeah.
the CIA began to kill our rock stars and everything. But I won't go into that because I've written all that in a series of books that I don't normally talk about, called the Sub Rosa America series. And they are history books, 4 books, 1,300 pages of what happened to America since Kennedy's assassination. So you can all go and look at that. But the point is, how could I get the crazy idea that there's a secret space program and that this geoengineering is part of it, and that the entire environment is being reconstructed and reconfigured for agendas that have nothing to do with the agendas of the American people. That's what's happened. Is I have slowly over the years in writing these 3 books, each book was like a way of peeling back yet another layer of the secret space program and how the geoengineering was playing a role. You asked a really good question. It's a very important question. Why do chemicals have something to do with geoengineering? What is with these chemical trails? How do I know they're chemical trails? I haven't been up there. I haven't pulled out a machine and been able to test it.
Yeah, and Miss Freeland, just to be fair,
Yeah.
there have been times when people said, like there was a Jim Marrs famous example where Jim Marrs somehow they got samples and then they said that there was barium levels that were 800 times more than they should be, and then it turned out to be a mistake, a big mistake. So, is there proof that these so-called chemtrails really do contain some weird chemicals, or?
Oh, absolutely. There is tons of proof. And I would say it's kind of like you have to see what your source is, because maybe there wasn't a lot of barium in that sample. Maybe that was true. Maybe it wasn't true. And somebody just said it who has that kind of clout that it sort of shuts up all arguments. But yes, there are ways that it has been tested, despite the fact, and this is very important, despite the fact that the geoengineering program is basically a classified program. Now, does everybody know what classified means?
I'm pretty sure
that means it goes into closed session when they're talking about the specifics. And one of the specifics is what is in the fuel in the rockets that we see with the big trails coming out the back. Not the short trails, the very short trails that start about 3 feet or a meter behind a jet. And then you have this short trail. And then within 30 seconds, that trail is already evaporated. That's a contrail. That's a condensation trail. And
so there's an important distinction between what people call a contrail, which is ordinary water vapor, and what people would consider a chemtrail.
Exactly. The chemical trail.
Wouldn't somebody need to like fly up in a plane and put out a bucket or something and grab some of this trail in order to test it? How do you test it?
Not really, because all chemicals have a certain signature. And when they're released into the air in an aerosol, they will create certain patterns. And you at least will know, you might not know all the chemicals that are in the trail by the signature you see coming out the back of a jet. But because the trail lasts as long as it is, you know how long some of those trails are. And you know how long they last. They last 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour. And they slowly begin to dissipate out into a cloud cover. And that cloud cover looks like the old cirrus cloud covers, and yet it doesn't look like the old cirrus cloud covers.
Yeah, I've seen some of these strange things like checkerboard patterns in the sky that then sort of disperse into a weird looking cloud. But I've always just thought, maybe it's just planes flying back and forth or doing whatever. What gets me though is the I hear a lot of claims. Like I said, people claim that and that's something we should drill down on. People claim it's barium, aluminum salts, polymer fibers, thorium, silicon carbide. But why would they spray those specific things into the atmosphere? What is the purpose of this if this is
Each
real?
one of the chemicals that you're referring to. Now, at the beginning, we definitely knew there was barium, aluminum, strontium. Those were the three biggies that we knew. And we already knew the characteristics of barium. And it made sense that in an atmosphere that they were doping. That's a military term. Doping is when you want to run wireless operations, but you need particulate matter. You can't do it in a vacuum. You've got to have a lot of particulates in the atmosphere if you're going to run a lot of wireless operations. And of course, we all know that, so we, the civilians, have not had wireless as long as the military has had it. The military's had it for over a generation. And so they dope the atmosphere for various wireless operations. And I think the key here is, in order to understand why they would dope the atmosphere with the things that they decided on, what the Americans don't know is that these are all military operations. We tend to think if the newspapers, which are all corporate owned now, all the mainstream newspapers, and all pretty much, what can I say, sold out to corporations, if we're not told something is news, we tend not to trust our perceptions anymore, because we know we're living in a technical world. We know that that a lot of experts are involved in everything going on around us that's technology, whether it's TV or iPhones or the atmosphere even. And as long as we can breathe, and as long as, the rain is coming down and the sun is shining and the moon comes up, we think everything is all right. We have a military which does not tell us all the truth. And there are
kidding me. You're kidding me. Really? They keep secrets,
But the atmosphere is one of the biggest secrets, because what they're doing up there is there are many things going on. In fact, I have a list.
And can I just tell you that I have found some people that talk about chemtrails bother me, because they cite scientific theoretical papers about, let's say, putting particulates in the atmosphere to protect against ultraviolet radiation. But these are theoretical papers. And so for me, it's a jump from, is it possible to do this for a certain reason, to they are doing it, and what is the you know what I mean? It's like a little more of a jump.
No, I know.
That scant evidence. They say, well, there's this scientific paper that says you can pump this certain chemical into the atmosphere and it will slow down the rate at which ultraviolet light hits the earth. And yeah, that's theoretically true, but it doesn't mean that they're doing that actively,
Right. I understand. I think the first thing you would need to do, if you really want to nail this right down to the floor, is to start reading the patents of HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research.
We're going to get into that. Yeah. That's another part of this whole conspiracy.
HAARP is very, very important to understanding why the chemicals are what they are, and why they're laid every day. Every day in the stratosphere. There are jets, sometimes sounding rockets, sometimes drones, and they are laying particulate matter, nanoparticulates, right? Nanos are very tiny, at 1/1000th of a meter. I mean, you can't see them, but there are nanoparticles that are being laid because they need this doping of the atmosphere, but they need it because of what HAARP does. So we need to bring that in. So let me just read a list. I'm just going to read a list. This is not some paper or something. This is from Clifford Carnicom, the scientist I worked with and met, serendipitously. You know how life is. It sends you just the people you need when you have a mission to conduct. And I met Clifford in Santa Fe, New Mexico, years ago. And he was already on the trail of what the heck he was seeing in these chemical signatures of the jets over northern New Mexico. And I don't know if you've been in New Mexico in the long time ago when the sky there was deep blue. And since these trails have been laid, and they are laid a lot there because you have Kirtland Air Force Base there, Sandia National Labs is there. I mean, it's a big military zone. So they lay a lot of stuff in the sky. It is no longer a deep blue. So when I met Clifford, he had a list that he had come up with over the years. He had been observing the precipitation coming down, whether it was rain or dew or snow, from his HEPA filter, his air filter, which was one of the top of the line. He's finding stuff in these that he's analyzing chemically and through a microscope, and discovering all sorts of things coming down in the wake of these jets. So he said,
well, can we agree on one thing?
Yeah,
and that is
maybe
that if this is really happening, it would take hundreds and hundreds of people, right, to man the jets, to come up, to mix up the chemicals, to man the air bases that they're using to do it.
Right.
And we don't really see any whistleblowers, do we?
There have been a lot of whistleblowers.
Really?
But I don't think that you understand the power of the media. You know how it is. You're allowed to see some things, and other things, you're never going to see them.
Well, I definitely believe that, especially after the last couple of years, and seeing new revelations of what the government in collusion with tech can do to decide what we're allowed to view or see or experience or not. But that does seem a little, to me, if there's hundreds and hundreds of people doing this activity, I would think somebody would really spill the beans, or,
Well, they all sign NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, and some people have died for speaking out. I mean, it's like anything else that's a hot potato. That's
and the Out There channel is saying this, and he's right. They have admitted to some experiments with dropped chemicals into the atmosphere. Different governments have done experiments, but again, isn't there perhaps beneficial or an altruistic use of doing something like that?
If it were not weaponized, yes, I think that it could be. It could be. But this has all, what I put forward has all been weaponized. In other words, they have a saying in the military. What they want is they want to increase the force capacity of using the weather as a weapon, and that's what's happened. I mean, I guess I'm going to shock you now, because I'm going to tell you
there's not much in conspiracy land that shocks me. It's just a matter of So I guess. So if
you didn't let me say. You didn't let me.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
There is no natural weather that I know of. It's all engineered now, all of it.
You're kidding me. So when it rains on my house, somebody decided to make it rain on my house that day?
That's right. That's right.
And what do you base this on?
Well, 3 books worth of research. I mean, I'm certainly not the only one who knows this. You can find it out in several of the people who are in the movement with me. But let me read the 7 things, and then we can come back to this. There are 7 operations going on through geoengineering. Okay, so I just told you about the weather engineering. That's going on. That's absolute control over the weather. Then there are chemical and electromagnetic experiments going on, just like we're talking about chemicals right here, and electromagnetics from radar installations on the Earth, from lasers, NEXRADs, which are those big golf ball looking types of radomes. There are many ways, and I go into that in detail in the second book, chemical and electromagnetic. Then the third operation is planetary and geophysical, where the tomography capability of HAARP can move the plates under the earth and create any number of earthquakes, all the way from 5.5 earthquakes to 10 and up. Then also
and this is done by they would bounce a signal off of the atmosphere that would then redirect back to the earth.
HAARP works that way.
Signal,
yes,
right?
HAARP
so that I have heard that they can theoretically cause earthquakes because those transmitters are so powerful that they bounce the signal off of the stratosphere, atmosphere, whatever, and then it bounces back to Earth, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and that's
you believe they really can do that? They really can just cause an earthquake wherever they want one, and all over Earth?
Yeah, anytime.
Well, that would make a great weapon, right?
Well, it is. It is a great weapon. It's an amazing weapon. I mean, just look at 9/11. You want to talk about the weapon? That's what 9/11 was.
I've heard that you said that the 9/11 was a directed energy weapon, and I don't know if you know this, but we have one of the, in my opinion, one of the best 9/11 researchers ever, Jeremy Rise, in the live chat. And I don't know what he believes about that, but I know one thing. I know what temperature, jet fuel gets to. And so I'm very, of course, very suspect of the official narrative. I don't think we got the truth at all.
No, it's not the jet. The jet had nothing to do with it.
The jet fuel, yeah.
Yeah, it had nothing to do with it. Okay, let me go on. Then the fourth operation after the physical, the planetary and geophysical. Oh, and I didn't mention under the planetary and geophysical the geoengineered fires, these so-called wildfires. These are all geoengineered. And that has to do with the chemical trails, has to do with the chemicals that are in the trails that are coming down over the target area, and has to do with laser, and has to do with directed energy weapons. Yeah, you start those fires, and then you decide.
Well, theoretically, right, if they had a laser on if they had a high-power laser on a satellite, they could start a fire anywhere they wanted to, theoretically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you believe they're actually doing this for some reason.
Oh, they're doing it. They're doing it. And the other thing we haven't mentioned yet, I don't know that we're going to get to it very much, is the nanoparticles, the nanotechnology in the chemical mixtures that are coming down for a variety of purposes. And those nanobots in those particular particulates are very involved in those geophysical fires, especially the ones that we've seen recently, where it seems like something is choosing to burn this house, but not this house, and this car, but not that car, and this tree, but not that tree. What's that about? That's not a laser that's raising the ground of an area. No, that's a very intentional, directed use of a technology, and the nanomaterials scientists that I've talked with says it's the nanobots that are directed in those directions. I mean, we've got a technology that's just unbelievable going on here right in front of us, and we're not aware of how it works. So we, like Arthur Clarke said, anything that's technically sophisticated will seem like magic.
Like magic, yes.
Or like a conspiracy theory. Yeah, you just have to study the details. The devil is always in the details, and I'm a real detail freak. Okay.
Oh, and I admit that I am not very well read on these things. I've kind of dug into some of them, and sometimes I get to people with less than credible sources, or people with less than.
Yeah, I understand. I understand.
So it's easy to be dismissive, though. I try to not do that.
No, and it takes time. Look at me. I spent 12 years so far in this. No, I did not know that. I had no idea. Biology, I have it in my past in my college education, but I didn't have physics. I've had to study in order to catch up here. And the chemistry, I was familiar with chemistry, but okay. So the fourth operation is directed energy weapons. And that, I'm not going to go into that because that's more complex than it looks like. And then there's surveillance and neural manipulation coming from the sky, right? Coming down from satellite or whatever. And that has to do with mind control. We've all heard that HAARP has capabilities to.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna share some images of this HAARP facility just so people get an idea. It's massive, field full of antennas, and it's capable of some super high power, super high frequency signals that they're bouncing into the atmosphere. They say for the study of weather, right? But
no, they say for communication with submarines. But there are many cover stories about HAARP, and one of them is that it's been shut down. Now, it was briefly shut down after it was very successful in controlling the ionosphere, and that's its main job.
Well, here's a question that I have for you that may be, would a super secret facility, though, they have open houses occasionally where anybody can go to the open house and see the facility. The tickets are free. That would seem to be counter to me to somebody that's running a secret nefarious project, right?
You're kidding
me. Or are
me.
they doing it right out in the open on purpose and going, sure, come in. And they just clean up all of the secret stuff when people come and look at it, and then they put it back. I don't know how this works.
You're kidding me. That
they have an open house, Ms. Freeland. That's all I'm saying.
You really think that kind of thinking is? I mean, I don't even know how to respond to that. It's
no, I mean, it's just a question. I mean, what do you think is going on there then? That they're doing this right out in the open?
I mean, all of NASA is pretty much a PR agency. It's not really.
Oh, that I agree with on.
Yeah. Very scientific. And the semblance of something is hardly ever what it really is. Now, when you talked about HAARP, it's very important to say to people, if you're going to talk about it now, we can talk about it now. I haven't finished those 7 operations, but we can get back to that. HAARP.
Oh no, you can go ahead. I'm sorry. I don't mean to keep interrupting you. I apologize.
I know you're excited to.
Yeah, that's what it is. I'm like, I can finally ask somebody every question I've ever had about all this crazy stuff, because this is some crazy stuff, but it's very interesting.
But it is very sophisticated. You're right about that. I mean, like HAARP, let's just, this field of antennas that you see in the illustration there, those are all phased array antennas. And that's a very particular kind of antenna. You have, if you own an iPhone, which I do not own, an iPhone has phased array antennas in it. And what it means is each of those antennas can be directed to work together with the others as one single beam. And that's what makes HAARP so powerful. Its ability to form that beam with all those individual antennas and zap that ionosphere, puncture it, go in there, pop all those electrons off of the atoms there, make more ions, and bring those down to our atmosphere, to ionize our atmosphere and make it sort of like a mini ionosphere is what's happened. In fact, Clifford Carnicom told me years ago that all his atmospheric testing, and he can do that from the ground, he doesn't need to go up there. All the atmospheric testing that he did indicated that the atmosphere was no longer what it had been 10 years before. It had been completely transformed. And it's been completely transformed by the ions that HAARP is able to pull from the ionosphere. And then, we have the doping of the atmosphere that I've already talked about, which all these chemicals that all do something different for the sake of the wireless operations that are going on. And I'm not just talking about everybody's cell phone when I say wireless operations or fast downloads or broadcast stations. I'm talking about weaponizing the atmosphere through this technology for the sake of political power. And that is what we have now. Ever since HAARP was successful in 2013 and the Air Force announced it, up in Alaska at a senatorial meeting. It and other ionospheric heaters are all working in collusion or in league with each other because they're all calibrated through these phased array antennas to operate together. And so we have a great weapon system, which it could be used for good, I think. I think one of the things that it could be used for, if it weren't weaponized, is to transmute radiation into something more benign. I really do, but that ain't going to happen, because this is the major weapon in the American arsenal that is used often to produce weather events that are like extreme hurricanes, extreme cyclones, extreme tornadoes, extreme earthquakes. All of these are money makers for the fat cats. They all get weather derivatives out of all that. So it's got an economic purpose. You know, I think Naomi Wolf wrote that wonderful book about disaster capitalism. Well, this is a tremendous creator of disaster capitalism for those who want to get rich.
If they can control the weather, though, why wouldn't the people in power stop some of the tragedies, like huge, like what happened in New Orleans or what happens to Florida? Could they stop those, hurricanes or tornadoes?
Not classified operations. You can't stop classified operations. It doesn't matter how big of a business you are. Maybe Bill Gates would have something in that. I don't know how big you'd have to be. But all of those that were in the early 2000s, all those extreme weather situations, I talk about in the first book. I analyze all those, including Katrina, the one in New Orleans, and all of them were experimental. They were testing how to use the HAARP, and the HAARP has to work in what's called an interferometry way, which means basically it has to cross beams. It'll create its own beam with those phased array antennas, and then there has to be another beam from another HAARP-like ionospheric heater. And my guess is they would have used the one at Brookhaven National Labs out on Long Island, or maybe the one in Norway, or maybe the one down that used to be at Arecibo, Puerto Rico. And they cross those beams over the target area after really intensely putting a lot of chemtrails there for the particulate matter. And then they have the weather, the weather that is created. And then they do the analysis after the damage. I mean, to them, we're just lab rats. But you know that, don't you? We're just lab rats.
Yeah, some people might agree with you, me being one of them. But, so what do you think then that the larger game here is then? They've developed in this thing as weapons. Is it just for control, or they're trying to profit, power? Why would they do all this?
I think it's part of the globalization going on now, the global elite that we've been hearing about for the last 3 years in a different context. But again, it's similar in that it's a chemical context. They have a certain idea of the kind of world they want for the future. They want a very technical world. They want a wireless world, a world in which you and I are living virtually on the internet, and all of our thoughts are.
Some of us might say that that's already begun. I spend a huge amount of my time on the internet. But you know what, Miss Freeland, I have a cabin in the woods that I love because I can escape. Remember when the internet first started, it was an escape from the real world. And now you need to escape the internet to get to the real world now. It's just everywhere.
Inversion, right? There's a lot of inversion going on.
One thing I wanted to say, because there are some very skeptical people here, me being one of them sometimes, is one thing I noticed about your books is, regardless of what people think, you have incredible reviews of your books. I've never seen, normally very controversial topics, somebody will trash the book. I don't see that with any of your books. Most people are you have all these glowing reviews. And I think that might be because they're so well cited and sourced and researched.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think that's the reason. And I have a proclivity for seeing the big picture. Once I get the devil's details and nail them down and start looking at how they interrelate, then I can just see the big picture of what's going on. So you ask me what their purpose is. Yes, it is power. It is control. It has to do with controlling the Earth. Let's go back to the secret space program for just a moment. I always quote a Soviet astronomer named Nikolai Kardashev, who lived during the Cold War. And he said that in order for a nation or some sort of global entity to actually create a real space age, 3 things would have to happen. The first is they would have to have full spectrum dominance over their own planet, over planet Earth. And we're seeing that happen now, full spectrum dominance. And I don't mean just geophysical and having to do with the geoengineering. Think about full spectrum dominance over society, full spectrum dominance over the electromagnetic spectrum, over all the electromagnetics, all operations that are going on. So full spectrum dominance over planet Earth. The second one, Kardashev said, was full spectrum dominance over your star. That would be our sun. And during this this solar minimum that we're in, they are doing a lot of experiments on the sun. And the sun is basically plasma. So these are plasma experiments going on the sun.
Isn't that dangerous?
From here and from there. Believe it or not.
Wouldn't it be this stuff always bothers me. Like messing with the weather bothers me.
Yeah, me too.
And I'm not particularly religious, but I think that some things should be left to God.
I'm with you on that. I'm with you. All right. So the third thing really sounds crazy. So the third thing is
we haven't gotten crazy enough yet. Let's deep dive into the whole thing, Miss Freeland. Let's get crazy.
The third thing is full spectrum dominance over the planetary system, which we have, right, with our 7 planets, and over the galaxy. And that will constitute a real space age. So what I'm saying is the megalomaniacs at the very top of this food chain of power very much are dedicated to controlling everything on planet Earth, controlling our star, and controlling our planetary system. Through all the planets, all the way to Saturn, all the way out to Uranus. I mean,
shouldn't we have that right if we're the only intelligent beings in the solar system? Shouldn't we have the right to do what we wish with those resources?
Well, I think you could have that argument with these megalomaniacs. I don't know.
Yeah, you're right about that. Yeah, Elon Musk wants to take over Mars. So
well. Exactly. So a lot of this, where is the difference between NASA's fantasies and CGIs that it creates all the time? See, I don't trust NASA at all. I've learned not to trust it. It lies all the time. I've learned not to trust CERN in Switzerland. We haven't talked about the
that's a whole other accelerator. Yeah, that's a whole other conspiracy.
All of these things, these all very high tech. I mean, it is incredible, the sophistication, and I can understand why a lot of people who do not have the patience to wade through all the detail in order to understand all this tech, why they would say, oh, well, they must have made an agreement with aliens. This must be off-planet technology. They could never figure this stuff out. Unfortunately, I have found that if I can think it, I can understand they have created this technology and it is fully operational and they are improving it all the time. It's not a done deal. This is a constant improvement thing. But meanwhile, here we are, we're breathing this stuff. We're breathing these nanobots. We're breathing the chemicals that are laid. And our health has never been as bad as it is now in America, certainly. And I mean, I hear from people all over the world because of these books. And, you know, all of us are being chemmed amazingly. And you ask why they would do it. I've already said power. I've already told you about Kardashev. Here's the final thing. They want a transhuman race. They do not want a nature-based race anymore. That's old school. They want a cyborg race that can,
like human sapien 2.0, and we see
like 2.0. Exactly.
I have a background in computer science, Miss Freeland, and I'm very concerned about two things. I'm very concerned with artificial intelligence and with transhumanism.
Yes.
Because there's all kinds of implications to this. Like, for example, if humans were to merge with AI, then there would be two races of people, the unaugmented and the augmented. And certainly the augmented would have power and control over the unaugmented. And it may become, this gets into so much philosophy and strangeness. Like, it's going to be rich people, the powerful, rich and elite, that have first access to this merging of AI with the human brain. And then they're going to become essentially superhuman. And people think that that's out there, but it may come. We see the beginning.
It's already happening. You know it's already happening, don't you? It's already.
Well, I know that people are laying the groundwork for it, for sure, with things like Neuralink or other digital interfaces
to the human
brain. And
the term I would put out would be BCI, the brain-computer interface. The brain-computer interface is happening through the nanotech we have breathed in. Now, just digest that for a moment. We have breathed in trillions and trillions and trillions of nanosensors, nanobots, nanotechnology, nanoparticles. It's all in here. Does it all go out through the urine and feces and sweat? No, it does not. It actually resides in the body and awaits its master's voice. And I use that term very much consciously to show that it is a transceiver system. And it's already, they've got miniature little tiny, it's so hard to imagine tiny computers in these nanobots. And they are transceivers. They transmit and they receive. And so they're in our bodies. And all
do you think that people are breathing these things in or eating them right now?
Absolutely.
But wouldn't there be proof or evidence of that?
Yes.
Like you could put under a microscope?
What do you think Morgellons is? What do you think it is?
Oh, that's a very mysterious disease.
Morgellons was the beginning of it all. And Clifford Carnicom was the first scientist to thoroughly study Morgellons. And that Morgellons is just the first. And I could make a thread from back in the 90s with Morgellons all the way to certain inoculations and what is being found in certain inoculations going on this very day. This is all the same thing. We are involved in brain-computer interface. We are utilizing organic and inorganic matter to create these AIs so that we will have a cyborg race. And you're right, the way I picture it is the way you picture it. Not so much the augmented, because I think there will be the augmented rich, of course, but there will be a massive slave class. And those will be the ones that are going side by side, that transhuman race, that now their genetics are altered, Now they are plugged in to the space fence, which I haven't talked about yet. I don't know if
Yeah, did you know, Miss Freeland, when somebody messaged me and say, "I can't believe you're going to have the space fence lady on tonight. That's awesome." So I haven't heard of this. Do you mean like prison planet Earth kind of theory?
well, it
Yeah,
is kind
we
of
should
like
get into the space fence. I want to hear about this.
all right. Okay, so let me finish this thought.
Oh, sure. Sorry.
We're having this nanotech thing, and it is the BCI connector. It's not a matter of necessarily turning people into robots. It's a matter of having the little robotics on a nano scale, 1/1000th of a meter, inside us already in transceiver connection with Base Central, wherever Base Central happens to be. A guy sitting on a laptop in Colorado Springs, Colorado, sipping an organic orange juice and giving us the latest directions of where that nanobot should go next inside our bodies, and connecting it with the computer processor that's nearby. I mean, yes, I'm using my imagination, but I'm not using my imagination for some futuristic, crazy theory. I'm talking about what you can read papers and patents on right now. And it's all happening right now.
But isn't in fairness, isn't it a big jump from patent to this worldwide conspiracy where they're
Yes,
actually
the
doing
fact
this
that
stuff?
there's a patent doesn't mean it exists. You're absolutely right. But unfortunately, just as we've found regarding what has happened the last 3 years and looking at the patents of a certain gentleman who had to do with Wuhan, you can find those patents and it's
Oh
already
no.
operant. It's already operant. So it's all coming online right now. We need to stop using the future tense and start looking at what's in front of us and studying the details. So now let me talk about the space fence, okay?
Sure, yeah.
All right, that's the second book. At the end of the first book, I was on Coast to Coast. They always invite me whenever I write a new book. And after I got off the show, I had hundreds of emails. And one of them was from a very important guy who hardly anyone has heard of, called Billy Hayes. And Billy Hayes is known as the HAARP man because he was the team leader that built the entire HAARP construct of phased array antennas up in Gakona, Alaska. So Billy worked on 240 installations of the US military around the earth, building all these antennas for the secret space program. Now,
Pardon me, sorry.
Billy said to me when we finally got in phone contact, he said, "You're going to need me because you need to write another book. I'm going to tell you where this is all going." And because he had worked on over 240 installations, I knew he was speaking the truth. What I didn't know yet was that he was an MK Ultra survivor. Since he was 8 years old, he had been programmed for these electromagnetics by the CIA, and that the CIA actually owned the original patents, actually ran the original operation of HAARP, because this is such a huge intelligence coup to have an instrument like what is up there. So Billy was my sidekick for 2 years while I wrote Under an Ionized Sky. And Billy was invaluable to me because as an MK Ultra survivor, he had memorized, he was like having a dictionary or like an encyclopedia right at your hand of everything electromagnetic. And he knew a lot about the military because he had worked for the military for all those years. So with Billy's help, I was able to detail exactly how the planet has been full spectrum dominance dominated. And that is through this, what we generally call the smart grid. I think it would be a good term. It's a little bit too little, but the smart grid means that above the planet, if you just think for a moment and go way up into the stratosphere and think about looking down at the planet, and then here on the Earth, there are all sorts of infrastructure instruments. Well, up here at the top, where the jets fly and dump their chemicals and metals and everything, we have a metal ring forming around the equator of the Earth. And you can actually see a video or two on this. It's graphic. It's not from up there, but you can see the patent as well. I usually show it in my PowerPoint slideshow. So you've got that. It's magnetic. And we're kind of caught between that because we have the same elements in us. Those are all from the chemtrails. Those are the ones that ended up in centrifugal force, while the others fell down here onto the earth for us to breathe and go into the soil where we grow our food. And down here, we also have the radar installations, wind farms. We have the wells, the oil wells. We have NexRads, those big golf ball things. We have fiber optics laid in the earth. I mean, on and on. All of these electromagnetic instruments on the earth, including the power lines. And so we're kind of trapped between these two because right now, through the doping of the atmosphere, through instruments like HAARP, through all this radar that's going through us all the time, and the gamma ray readings recently have been just unbelievable on the Earth. So we're kind of in this smart grid that's overwhelming because we're surrounded by this technology that has completely taken over full spectrum dominance, planet Earth, and we don't even know about it. And that's the space fence. And the space fence is a term from Lockheed Martin, because Lockheed Martin owns all the patents for the space fence. And of course, they insist that the space fence is only about this one installation in the Marshall Islands called the Kwajalein Atoll. No, it's not that. It's about all of this stuff. This is all space fence. And meanwhile, we're kind of being plugged in now through the BCI, the nanotech inside of us, the nanobots inside of us. We are being plugged into this space fence for absolute full spectrum dominance control.
But I don't understand. So what, to keep us on Earth, or just as a control grid somehow?
Well, I think
we're becoming, your theory is that we're becoming receivers of some sort.
Well, no, we're not just receivers. We're becoming part of the machining, the machinizing of the world. This planet is being turned into a machine. Nature is being killed, as you were talking off camera about your friend living in the forest and all that.
Yeah, I did mention that. I have a friend that's been in the forest his whole life, and he's convinced that they are spraying something in the atmosphere or doing something geoengineering wise that's killing the trees, because he is seeing an alarming number of trees in the forest just standing dead. And he's seeing things like foam in all of the creeks and streams and ponds and lakes around him that he never saw before, that he thinks is some sort of chemical. And it's kind of sad for him because he feels like he's lived there his whole life, and the forest is slowly dying. And he believes, at least, that he's seen some of these planes spraying things over the actual forest he's in.
Absolutely.
And I have some other outdoor friends that are saying things like there's so many standing dead trees. In the forest where my cabin is, I've been there only a few years, but I see more than I remember would be in a typical forest, standing dead trees, than when I was a kid, playing in the woods. You would see a standing dead tree occasionally, but there's a lot more of them. And there's a lot of dying trees, which is weird,
Yeah.
And if you do ask a naturalist or an arbiter in the area, they say, well, there's natural cycles to everything, and maybe there's just a high number right now, and the new seedlings come up, and in 10 years you won't see that, or 20 years you won't see as many. But I don't know. It makes me worry,
Yeah, and rightfully so. I would be worried because I would say that most of that is from the aluminum oxide that is the primary perpetrator that is dumped liberally in the stratosphere and then comes down to the earth. We know about the detrimental effects of aluminum as an adjuvant in vaccines. We know that, but what people don't know is that we are breathing, and it's going into our soil. Actually, if you examine the first 6 inches of soil, if there's any soil people out there to really examine that, you're going to find that the aluminum content is off the charts, and aluminum will kill organic matter in quantity. So we're in a real,
well, especially if you're planting your garden in the aluminum high soil, right? Because it'll leach into the tomatoes or peppers or green beans, whatever you're growing.
And then you're eating the food. Yeah.
Nice.
You see the quandary here is that I'd like to say that all of this has gotten out of control of the military industrial intelligence complex, but I actually think a real radical thought I have, and I don't think
another
I have
one
radical thoughts. This thought is radical. But I think they have purposely turned the earth, weaponized the earth, and thus turned it into something absolutely inimical to a natural human being and a natural animal and a natural tree and forest. In other words, nature is being erased. And what they want is a completely virtual world. And we hear that from the transhumanists. We hear it from the singularity believers, that, there's going to be the time when we all already through the SWS program, the I always forget, simulated world simulation, where they are making a virtual replica of Elana and putting it over here. And then there's the natural Elana. And what they want is for the virtual Elana to tell the natural Elana what to do and what to think and what to feel and how to behave, and this whole brain-computer interface through all these chemicals. I mean, the whole thing is like one hugely cacophony symphony going on of anti-nature, anti-human, anti-life, and I believe that in this third book, I have been able to prove this in 6 Ways to Sunday, that through these elements of chemicals, electromagnetics, and nanotechnology, and now synthetic biology, which is the final coup de grace, they have been able to turn the planet into a place that we natural human beings will just always be sick and be basically feeding profits to the medical industry and the big pharma industry. And remember, big pharma, hey, you want to know who provides all these chemicals that are being dumped on us? Huh, it's big pharma.
But wouldn't they be poisoning themselves and their own future?
They must have the antidotes for their own loved ones. They must have the antidotes. And the best filters ever. And the best water filters. And the best underground homes and whatever. Yeah.
So they'll be immune from these sort of strange effects. I've always thought it was funny, like glyphosate, because some of this stuff is really out there, but glyphosate is one issue that I just don't understand them spraying that on all of our food. And then, if you really dig into that, you learn that they not only spray it on the food as they're growing it, but right before harvest or after harvest, they spray it on it again. And I always thought it's kind of crazy that we have to pay extra to have food without chemicals in it, to buy organic. People say, oh, you should eat organic, but it's twice the cost I have 2 children, and it's expensive to buy organic anything, but it's like you're paying a tax on getting food without chemicals in it.
Well, it's very similar to the smart meter, right? You don't want a smart meter, you want to opt out, and now you're going to have to pay extra to opt out. So everything's sort of inverted now. You won't have this, so you'll pay extra, and that's the way of the game. That's how it's all being laid out.
Here's a great question. Gorilla Gamer asks, what about the pilots? Do they know that they're spraying poison on their own country?
Yeah, they do. They do. But to make us feel better about the pilots, it isn't necessarily, I mean, a lot of them. Remember, these jets are not just military jets. These are commercial jets laying this too. Under Project Cloverleaf, they sign NDAs so that they don't talk, or they're fired, or maybe worse. But most of the chemicals appear to be being run from the ground. So the distribution is not just coming out of the engine combustion chamber. Let's forget that. Yeah, that's JP8 fuel. There's a lot of terrible stuff in there that we shouldn't be breathing too. But I'm talking about a supplementary system looking like it's coming out of the wings. If you really examine some of the chemical trail photos of jets, you'll see that sometimes there are just about 6 streams coming out, 2 each wing, and then 2 in the off the combustion chamber. So it's run from the ground, so the pilot does not have to make a decision about that, does not have to press a button or anything. They turn it on and they turn it off from the ground. Are the pilots aware? Yes, they are. I think originally they didn't want to be, because it's it's kind of a mess, isn't it? And you have to sign an NDA. But now I would say that I would be surprised to meet a pilot who doesn't know, who's running a commercial, who's a commercial pilot, maybe military. I don't know. I don't know how that works, but the commercial pilots, yes.
So I'm still a little unclear though. So the end game is to turn us all into cyborgs somehow, and control all of humanity, and that would be the elite ruling class
and all of
the strings.
All of the planet. That's important. I would say that all of this, part of this has to do with the fact that it's very hard to get past the Van Allen belts, right? They're radiated. They're very high radiation. And a human simply cannot endure that kind of radiation. That's why though many people believe that we never really went to the moon, at least the way they said we went to the moon, because it's impossible unless you have a lead-lined suit to get through those Van Allen belts. So it's possible that part of
I guess proponents, people on the other side say, no, we knew there would be some radiation risk, but the NASA and the astronauts evaluated the risk of going through the belt and decided it was an acceptable level of risk. And some of those astronauts did suffer earlier forms of cancer than they might have otherwise being through the belts because they were exposed to that radiation. Right? I mean, and they're going to be going back to the moon so soon with this new Artemis project. So
and then you hear rumors that there's been a way that they've been able to make a gateway through the radiation belts, and I mean, you hear a lot of things, and I really don't know about those, but I was just bringing this up as a possibility, as of one possible reason that they want another model of a human being. They want a different model in order to do the planetary traveling that they have in mind coming up. So it's just another theory. I don't have any opinion on it, really.
You do have some theories that I thought were a little out there. Like I saw a lecture that you gave, and you were talking about LED light bulbs having.
Oh, you're bringing up LEDs now?
Well, I heard you talk about them, and Here's one thing that you should know about me is that I'm an electronics guy. I have a bag of them right here,
Uh-huh.
and so some of the things that you say about LEDs, I just have to disagree with because, I've been using LEDs my entire life as an electronics guy.
So why are you wearing sunglasses, if I could ask? Not that I.
Oh, because I have a paralyzed eye. Actually, I'm sorry, I didn't let
And
you
it
know
has
that.
nothing to do with the LEDs.
No, no. I have something called third nerve palsy from a brain aneurysm. So one of my eyes is paralyzed, and I'm a little self-conscious about that on camera. And a long time ago, I figured out I could just put on a pair of sunglasses and never
Well,
worry about it or
very
have a
cool.
wonky eye.
I was
But
just
I
asking.
mean, I have an LED right here that is, it's a clear LED.
Yeah.
And I'm going to solo myself just so I can show the audience. And so it is a clear LED.
Yeah.
And, you have some theories that there is all kinds of things inside these LEDs, and we shouldn't keep LED light bulbs in our home because they could be listening devices or cameras in them. Did you
Well,
say maybe?
some of them. I don't know. I can't speak for all LEDs. I
Oh,
know.
okay. I thought you meant all of them
No,
because,
I don't think
I
so.
got a bag right here and there's nothing but the light emitting
Yeah,
light.
yeah.
It's
No, I
a
know.
it's a
But
silicon wafer inside that,
yeah,
when the energy hits it, it creates light. It's a very simple
yeah.
but ingenious device. Um, so I have heard some of your theories that I went, I don't know about that one. But if you're saying maybe some, but not others.
I would say some because I'm no expert either. I know I've read a lot of accounts and talked to some people who really know a lot about LEDs. And there are some doubts about it, but not all of them, I would assume. I would assume those look really simple. But take
Yeah.
the street lights. The street lights is one that where I'm wondering about, and I've heard about that from UK, and also we're getting now all these street lights that all have this sort of oval shape. You've probably seen them. They're kind of big. They're like maybe this long, and they have LEDs in them, and they go on and off according to when a car comes or goes. And there's some doubt about them and what they're doing. So I'm just bringing it up to people.
No, I understand. I just wanted to ask you about the LED thing.
Yeah,
I thought you meant every LED, or you gave a talk where you talked about the LED light bulbs, how you should not have those in your
well,
house
I think
because they
people
resonate at certain frequencies or something like that too.
until they understand their technology, I think people. What I would like is for people to really examine the technologies they're using in their homes. I would really love that. So that they really understand, like the TV, like the HD TVs or flat screen or whatever. How does it really work? What's really going on? What are the components in it? Maybe get an electrical engineer, come over, take off some of the panels and start looking inside to see if there really is a microphone in there or really is a camera in there. Just to
Well, certainly
examine.
there is in smart TVs, in some smart TVs, there
Yeah,
certainly is. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Just so people learn more about the technology.
And
That's
Cosmic
what I would.
Neighbors wanted me to ask you which LEDs are bad. You said some of them are.
I don't know.
Okay, you know this.
I don't
Okay.
know.
So you said that you're writing a new book now? So this will be your fourth book?
Well, see, what happened is I published this big book, right? It's really big, 650 pages. I know it's pretty big, and then I was approached by Inner Traditions Publishing. They want to do a second edition, but they want me to do it in 2 books so that there are less pages in the geoengineering book and then less pages in the synthetic biology book. And at first I was not interested in the idea, but then I began to think about it and think that might be easier for people, and they'd pay less money for a smaller book, 2 smaller books. And so I thought, yeah, I think I'll take a look at that and see if there. I have a lot of examples in the present book. I could take some of those examples out without really weakening my argument. Then I could make it things a little shorter, make it easier. Because you must know this, Stephen, that people are having trouble reading now. They're having trouble remembering what they're reading. They're having
Yeah.
trouble concentrating on.
Yeah, and a lot of people just don't read anymore. They'd rather watch a
Don't read.
video or
They'd rather
yeah,
watch a video.
or listen to
Exactly.
audiobooks. I listen to audiobooks, but usually when I'm in the car or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And then,
so anyway, that's how I ended up. I'm rewriting this book into two books. But this is the real the book that will last for 50 years at least, because I really wrote this book for the future, when they wonder what the heck happened back here, because nobody's writing about it, because so many professors and people who know a lot have either signed NDAs or they're afraid to move. There are all sorts of classified things they can't talk about. Whatever it is, I'm pretty much the Lone Ranger right now.
the Lone Ranger, yeah.
Without Tonto.
Wow. So, well, I want to thank you for being here. This has been a pretty interesting experience, and I'm glad that we could bring my audience somebody that has really researched these things. Do you are you very fearful then for the future? Like what I guess the final question would be is, if all this stuff is true, if all this is really happening, then what is the timeline here? You know, should I go live in a mountainous fortress in the woods and try to escape this, or you know, what kind of timeline do you think that they're on if this is all true?
Well, we've made such a huge leap in revelation of the situation in the last 3 years. Would you agree with that? I mean, suddenly it's like
It's a different world.
Boom. Yeah, it's a different world. Whereas all of this has been developed over time, but the revelation of it to the world has just happened recently. And all I'm trying to do now is get the geoengineering piece of the puzzle into the conversation. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to save anyone, or I don't have some wonderful epiphany type of revelation of how we're going to get out of this mess we're in, because it's in a way too late to stop the geoengineering. It's too late. But there are things that will be happening that we don't know yet. And so I want people to get ready to be able to have the knowledge. Knowledge is power. I really believe that. The dark side knows that, and the light side should know that. And you have to really get that knowledge in there so that you can make really clear mental pictures of your condition. And I feel, I've gotten very serious in the last few years. We need to defend humanity. We need to keep a human race going, because I see how adamant these transhumanists and singularity people are, and Satanists, I might add them as well. They seem very serious.
Oh, we got them too?
Yeah.
Great. Great.
They're very serious about creating a brain-computer interface between AI and the human being. And to do that, they need the hardware and the software in us and in our brain. And I believe they have that now because of what we've been breathing the last 25 years. 25 years this geoengineering's been going on. So that's where we are. But if we have consciousness, if we're conscious of our condition, who knows what can happen? Human being consciousness is fantastic, but we have to really develop it. It doesn't just fall on you like manna from heaven. And that's what I think. So I don't have any time frame, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years. I don't really know how to gauge this sort of thing, but I know how far it has come, at least. And I think I'm being conservative in how far it's come. I could get more radical, but I'm not going to, because
you can get more radical. Wow.
I go by the data. I go by the data. So anyway, that's what I think, Stephen.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, they can just search by your name on Amazon and find all of your books, right?
Right, and I have a site called ElanaFreeland.com, which is run by my web mistress. She does a fantastic job.
Okay, great. Well, I want to thank you for joining us, and I hope you'll come back again sometime.
Well, thank you, Stephen. Thanks for having me.
You have a great night. And when I throw you out of here, you can just shut down your browser or close out the tab, and you're fine. Okay.
All right, will do. Will
All
do.
right. Thank you very much, Miss Freeland.
Okay.
You have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, friends. Wow. What an interesting interview. Um, yeah. um, Here's what we're going to do. Now is a good time for me to remind you of a few things. The first is that we are a viewer-supported show, and that means viewers like you all over the world who enjoy the content that we produce throw a couple bucks in our hat and keep us doing this very thing. The other thing that I could remind you is that the other way that you could really help us is to like, comment, subscribe, and share these videos. It really, really does help. We get raised in the search engine. The search engine, or excuse me, the algorithm loves engagement. So when you like a video, when you comment on a video, or you share it on your social media, that really does help us. The other thing I would remind you, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. And it's also a good time for me to remind all of you people listening in audio podcast land, we love and appreciate all of you audio listeners, but you're missing half the fun. We really would love you to come over here to YouTube, which is essentially our home base for the show on the internet. Go to the YouTube search bar, hit that little magnifying glass, put in Truthseekers, one word, smash the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and you too will know when we're doing a live taping for the show. If you're listening in audio podcast land, you are listening to a replay, of course. We'd love for you to come here to the live broadcast taping. So go on over to YouTube, Truthseekers, one word in the search bar. Look for me, the strange guy with sunglasses. Go to that channel, smash the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and you too can come here and be a part of our live interactive chats, ask questions, comments, share your comments and your thoughts on the night's guests or subject matter we are conversing about and discussing. And the same can be said for all of you new friends on all of these new platforms we are on, including Twitch, Odyssey, DLive, and Rumble. We love you guys over there. And I'm so pleased that this new distribution platform seems to be working great. And there's plenty of new friends finding us from all over the internet, including on Twitch, Odyssey, DLive, and Rumble. But we would like you to be a part of the main hub of the show here. So all of you, while we love and appreciate you listening on those all platforms, we'd love for you to come over here, go to YouTube, Truthseekers, one word in the search bar. Look for the weirdo with sunglasses. Go there, smash the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and come here sometimes. Though we do know, and I kind of love the fact that I'm getting messages from people that are saying, Stephen, I'm so glad you're on Rumble. I refuse to watch YouTube for various reasons or whatever, or they don't want to watch on Facebook, whatever. We love that you guys are there on those alternative platforms, Twitch, Odyssey, DLive, and Rumble. But we'd still love for you to come to our YouTube channel and subscribe. It really would help us if you did that. So you are most welcome. Just go over to YouTube, Truthseekers in the search bar, and go there and hit the subscribe button. It really would help us if you did that. And of course, I did remind you that we're a viewer-supported show. We read every single super chat. We also can take pledges, or the ability you have to throw a couple bucks in our hat through either Cash App or PayPal. Instructions to do that is in the description of all these videos. And that reminds me, no matter if you're listening to the audio podcast or if you're watching on one of our distribution points like Twitch, Odyssey, DLive, or Rumble, if you go to the description of the video, one of the first things in the description will say, subscribe to our YouTube channel here. So you don't even need to search. You can just go to the description of the video, click on the link, you'll find our channel, and hit that subscribe button. We welcome all of you. You are almost welcome here. I'm going to have Ian, our wonderful announcer, tell you how you can help the show and be a part of the journey. Don't just listen to the show. Don't just watch the show. Help us continue the journey and be a part of that journey with us. I'll be right back. And when I return, I'll be reading every single super chat, every single PayPal pledge or Cash App. We love and and want to honor every one of you who are helping us to continue this journey. We read every single one, and I'm going to do that right after this short announcement. We'll be right back, friends.
Truth Seekers is a viewer-supported show. Wonderful people like you who enjoy this show send pledges in the form of super chats, super stickers, super thanks, PayPal, or Cash App. Instructions for how to help are in the description. You can also join our Patreon, and for as little as $1 a month you can get extra content. Patreon supporters get a backstage pass, early access to all our production videos before they are distributed publicly, Stephen Cambion's music, private writings, a monthly show journal, and more. You can also become a YouTube channel member for $5 a month. A YouTube membership includes all of the Patreon benefits, plus a special members badge, priority reply to video comments, and the live chat, plus a monthly members-only video. We thank you all, kind and generous benefactors, for supporting Truth Seekers. Thank you for your generosity and support.
And welcome back, friends. We are back, and we'll be reading all the super chats first. And after that, we would be happy to take comments and questions from the live viewers and the live chat. For those unaware, if you're in the Twitch, Facebook, or YouTube chat, all those comments get aggregated to me and I can share those. However, unfortunately, if you're watching on Odyssey, DLive, or Rumble, I may not see or be able to share your comments, but we still love you leaving the comments there in those live chats as well. We're working on a system that will aggregate those to me into a separate sort of browser tab that I will be able to share soon. This is still being developed. In the meantime, I can check in manually. But we want to thank Sven for a kind and generous SEK. I don't even know what that is. SEK, $20. Rock on, Stephen. Well, thank you, Sven, for your kindness, generosity, and support of the show. It is much, much appreciated. And I'm looking up what that is. Oh, Swedish kronas. So you're from Sweden. We love all you people in Sweden. We got a lot of Swedish viewers. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. It is much, much appreciated. And Sven, I should have guessed you were from Sweden. Anybody named Sven is either from Sweden or Denmark or Norway, right? I don't know any Sven that's not from maybe Germany, maybe, right, Sven? But good to see you there. And thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. So comments or questions for me, please put them in all capital letters. And we're going to take some comments and questions. We got Algo Ray over there in the Twitch. Says, I may not buy into all this, but was interesting to get this different perspective on the show. I'm glad you had her as a guest. Yeah, this, I have to be very honest about something. B. Baker, our chat room moderator and sometimes, contributing producer, has been trying to help me to book guests. And he booked her. And then what happened originally was that I don't know why, but I saw the name Elana and I thought it was somebody else, a secret space program insider, and was mistaken. That I had the wrong person. So then I had to rush, try to get the book and read it. I only got through a portion of it. Like she said, it's a big book and it's very, I would call it data dense. Like there's all these scientific citations and papers and things you gotta, me, when I'm reading that kind of book, I want to read the paper they're citing. So I stop reading the book, go read the paper, try to get a full understanding of it. and this was, and this is why I played it at the beginning of the show. This was what I call an Evel Knievel show, because you never know how these things are going to go. Some people don't appreciate being asked for any evidence, but luckily she took it pretty well. And I wanted to be kind to her, even though I may disagree with her on many things. Here's what I'll say: I definitely believe that there is poison in our water. There's poison in our soil. There's probably poison everywhere. But this overarching grand conspiracy that she theorizes about, I'm still not convinced. But I'm keeping an open mind. I'm reading more about these issues and to see what it is that I believe. So, and one other thing that I would say is this. Some of the people who are detractors of me and this show will take her appearance here and attack me for it. They will say, Steve Campion believes this lady about everything she says. And that's certainly not the case. It's not the case with any guest. And there is a range of guests we have here. Some of the guests, I agree with most of what they say wholeheartedly. Some of the guests I'm on the fence about. This is one of them. I wanted to be kind to her. I wanted to be able to bring my audience this is a big, strange conspiracy. But I wanted to bring somebody here that was an expert in all these things, and let's have a conversation and let's see. Let the chips fall where they may, but always be respectful to the guests, right? And let's I'm sure I saw some people wanted me to really be more pushy, or some people would have liked me to be nasty, but you gotta be kind to the guests. They're taking their time. Her and I can agree to disagree, or I don't have to believe that she's correct in all of her theories. And let's be clear, a lot of what she has is theories. They're not, proven facts. I mean, she may argue that some of them is, but when you start getting as deep as, they're making us consume nanobots and things, you kind of lose me. I mean, I'm a computer science guy. I would think that, nanobots, even no matter how small they are, would be detectable in a human bloodstream or whatever. So I have a lot of doubts about some of this stuff, but I'm keeping an open mind. I will tell you this, her book is information dense and thought-provoking. And I like that. And I like conspiracies. Even if we just examine the psychology behind this, I'm fascinated by the fact that so many people believe a great deal of what she's saying. We saw it in the live chat tonight. I was surprised. There was many, many people going, she's absolutely right about these chemtrails. She's absolutely right about this, about that. So it's an Evel Knievel show. And remember, what do I mean by that? Some people come here to these Evel Knievel shows to watch the whole show crash and burn and turn into some, I guess, honestly, when I was drinking, this might have went way different. I might have yelled at her or been nasty, or, I'm just not the same person not drinking. When I was drinking, I had and lost a great deal of patience. I had no patience. And for something like this, I would have popped off, and I wouldn't have been able to be kind to for the whole thing. But I think that's important. It's important in life. I'm trying to learn. Look, you're going to meet people in life that you disagree with, but I still think that she's an interesting person with an incredible background. We heard that she met President Kennedy as a child and things. Interesting lady. Nice lady too, right? No reason not to have a conversation. Gorilla Gamer is here and says, dude, do more true crime, homie. Loved yesterday's episode. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. A lot of people are giving me many compliments on that. Remember, that is just the opening salvo. I always go, what does that do in there? It's in the frame, right? You don't want to have things in frame. This is flesh-colored paint, for those wondering. I'm doing more work on the characters and masks, and we have more of those coming to you. Can't wait to get to that. So questions or comments for me, please put them in all capital letters. B. Baker is here and saying, Hug, like, subscribe, and share, please. Yes, that really, really does help us. Daniel Adams says AI huckster, possibly. I think that a lot of people are very fear-based with some of their beliefs, and it's like you have to be afraid to think that there's a grand conspiracy and the rich and powerful and elite are out to get you. But I believe that sometimes, in one form or another, the rich, powerful, and elite are out to get us. They don't like the peasants, and they certainly don't like the peasants having equal rights to them, because we're the peasants and they are the ruling class. Unknown Sender says she knows stuff. Yeah, and that's another thing. What if she's right about 10% of that? Even if she's right about 10% of it, that's crazy. That's a crazy thing to think about. And I tell you what, every time I see a contrail in the sky, I'm going to be wondering, is that a contrail or a chemtrail? What's in that chemtrail, Sandy Smith is here. Welcome, Sandy Smith. Good to see you. Says, I have a 60-inch Samsung TV flat screen, but it's about 15 years old. Pretty smart. They really got to be bored listening and watching to me, my dogs and my cat. Yeah, I think the same thing. And you know what, Sandy Smith, my son, I don't know why, but my wife got an Alexa, and my son loves that thing. He loves to talk to the Alexa. Like, he just has a conversation with Alexa. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm talking to Alexa. I'm like, about what? And he asks her questions and stuff, and I don't know. And I worry about that Alexa, though. Like, is it listening right now? But then I go, I'm pretty boring. I don't really care, right? Mr. Reckless Ryan says, I feel like I lost a few million brain cells listening to this. Well, we went down this rabbit hole. We're going deep, deep down the rabbit hole. And Sven with another 50, what is that again? It's Swedish krona. Thank you very much for the 50 Swedish krona. Sven, he's the MVP of Super Chats tonight. Thank you very much, Sven, for your kindness, generosity, and support. The Guerrilla Gamer says, Sven rules. All you Super Chatters rule. Love all of you. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. It really does help the show. And we got to buy a whole bunch of stuff to build a studio in the spring. And I'm setting aside every penny for that. So thank you all. Okay, and we have Billy Hicks here. Says, everyone want to know more, just watch this. Search for Fallen Angels, play this HAARP on Rumble, and put your big boy pants on, because it's a very hard truth that'll trigger the crap out of you. Okay, interesting. I'm going to look that up. Fallen Angels, play this HAARP. I'm going to write that down. Fallen Angels, play this HAARP. And it's HAARP with 2 A's, because it's referring to the HAARP project there. And I am aware that thing is capable of some pretty crazy things. It's an antenna array with 100 or more antennas, and they can all pinpoint the beams they're shooting up into the atmosphere to a single point. And Fox, what about the Marina Sarin poison? Yeah, Marina Sarin's out there pushing new conspiracy theories. Maybe we'll cover that in the future, Fox. And I appreciate you letting me know. She's talking all kinds of smack now, like the other people are all wrong about the alien grade conspiracy, but she's right about it, right? Patty M. Wilhelm says, Stephen, I think you were a very gracious host. That was a difficult subject. I agree. And that's why it's an Evil Knievel show, because people come here to see if it's going to turn into a cluster, right? Or if it's going to all crash and burn, or I'm going to if I'm going to lose it and start going, this is crazy, lady. And I tried my very best to, listen to her opinions on these subjects. And Footy Gangster, if an expert is bad, then he or she isn't an expert. Yeah, and thank you, Luis Caetano, for coming here and saying many things that I didn't want to say out loud, but you said them in the live chat, so thank you for that. Another 50 Swedish crowns. Very, very, very kind of you. I appreciate that, Sven. Good guy. Transhumanism and synthetic biology are things that the elites are really interested in. I think it behooves us to pay attention to them. Yeah, and maybe, do you ever know that some people, they get one little piece of the puzzle, right? And they're right about that one little piece. And I think maybe some people get overconfident and they think they see a bigger picture, start connecting dots. But her book so far is pretty interesting, and even if just thought provoking to make you think, like, oh my God, what if this is really happening? But most of me thinks that would be hundreds, thousands of people involved, and somebody would have spilt the beans about all this. But I might be wrong. I always leave the possibility open that I'm just too cynical and skeptical, right? Missed the show, but as ridiculous as it sounds, chemtrails, geoengineering, aka trying to get rid of, make the population sick, is absolutely a thing. A lot of people believe this. Easier to spot when it first started in the 90s, 2000s. Yeah. China is working on human-animal hybrids. God is not happy. You know, a lot of that stuff, though, Unknown Sender, is based on organ transplant research. Like, did you know that they're trying to inject human DNA into embryonic pigs, or hybridize pigs somehow with humans? Not that they would be like half human and half pig, just that there'd be enough of human genetics in the pigs so that they could start using pigs as organ donors, these genetically modified pigs as organ donors. Like, what if you needed a heart and they had these specialized pigs that were crossed somehow with human genetics, so your body would not reject the pig heart, it would take it and accept it? That would be a good thing, right? Now, people can have arguments about the ethics or morality of that. In that specific circumstance, I think human-animal hybridization would be a positive, beneficial thing. You know, but when we start talking about pig men, that's when it gets crazy, right? Everybody remember that Seinfeld episode with the pig man? That's one of my favorites. It's Pig Man, Jerry. There's a pig man. Footy Gangster says, Louis Caetano, like sloppy, no facts, more like glory hunters, like most of these ufology people, like my girlfriend Linda. Yeah. If I had to guess, a couple of hours at least, and plus I did spend a couple hours reading the book. I'm very skeptical about the chemtrails and related topics. So, admittedly, my attention span for things that I'm dismissive of is probably lower than it should be. Right? I struggle with that. So, in other words, if there's a subject that I'm intensely interested in, I can read about it for 12 hours or 3 days straight. But if there's a subject that I'm very dismissive of or skeptical of, I can't get through too much before I just lose it and say I'm going to go do something else. There's nothing to this. So I admit I'm somewhat dismissive. So, friends, we're coming up hard and fast on the 2-hour limit now. Some of you may be aware, but because of these alternative platforms that we are now distributing the show to, one of them, I think it's Daily Motion, has a hard 2-hour limit. That's why we haven't been doing these 3-hour streams as much anymore, trying to keep it to the 2-hour hard limit so that we can upload everywhere we can. So I want to thank my guests for joining us tonight. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us tonight. And we certainly want to thank you, kind and generous benefactors, PayPal, Patreon supporters, PayPal supporters, Patreon supporters, and channel members. And instructions for how to help and do all of that is in the description of the video. We love and appreciate all of you supporting us all around the world, including those who are just liking, commenting, and sharing. That's another way to support us. So, what can I say, friends? This has been a pretty crazy journey of a show. I want to thank all of you for joining us and welcome you to follow me on Twitter. It's at Stephen Cambion to keep up and know when the next shows are. We want to thank our chat room moderators. Thanks, Spooky, for the excellent graphics. Oh, and by the way, the Golden Probe Awards. I'm so sorry again, Spooky. I forgot totally about it. In the description of the video is a link to the Golden Probe Awards nominations. And I'm nominated for a Golden Probe. If you want to know what the hell that is, in the description of this video is a link to the video all about that. We want to thank all of you for joining us. And that's all I got for you, friends. Until next time, my name is Stephen Cambion. Good night, and God bless all of you.